Hey there, welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're tackling something you're probably pretty familiar with, stress. We're going to explore what it actually is, how it works, and why it matters. Think of this deep dive as your crash course in stress, with all the need-to-know infos from textbooks, scientific articles, and even some historical tidbits.
Sounds like we're about to unravel one of the biggest mysteries of modern life.
Exactly. And I think what's really interesting is how often we use the word stress without really understanding what's going on beneath the surface. I mean, it's more than just feeling a little overwhelmed, right?
You're absolutely right. The scientific understanding of stress is far more nuanced. In fact, it all started with a fascinating observation back in the early 1900s. Doctors noticed that patients with completely different illnesses were showing the same initial symptoms: fatigue, aches, fever, that general I feel awful kind of feeling.
It's like our bodies have this universal SOS signal that's wild. So, how did scientists connect the dots between these symptoms and stress?
That's where Hans Selye, the father of stress research, comes in. He was determined to figure out why our bodies react this way, so he started doing experiments. Mostly on rats, he'd expose them to all sorts of stressors: extreme temperatures, forced exercise, the rodent equivalent of rush hour traffic. Again,
Poor rats. But I'm guessing those experiments revealed something crucial about how we respond to stress.
they did. Seeley found that regardless of the stressor, the rats consistently showed the same physiological changes. Their bodies reacted in a remarkably similar way. This led him to develop the concept of the General Adaptation Syndrome, or GAS. And the key takeaway here is that your body reacts the same way to a traffic jam as it does to, well, let's say being chased by a saber-toothed tiger back in the Stone Age.
Wow. That puts things in perspective. So, whether it's a work deadline or a real life threat, our bodies basically hit the panic button in the same way. But what exactly happens when that button gets pushed? What's going on inside us?
Well, Seeley outlined three stages of GAs: alarm, resistance, and exhaustion. Imagine it like this. You're at a concert, the lights dim, the music starts, and you get that adrenaline rush. That's the alarm stage, your body's fight or flight response kicking in.
I can definitely relate to that. So, what happens when the music keeps playing and that initial excitement starts to wear off?
That's when you enter the resistance stage. Your body's trying to cope, to maintain balance even though it's under pressure. You're holding steady, but it's taking effort. Like the band playing an intense guitar solo. They're giving it their all, but, they can't keep it up forever.
And if the concert keeps going all night long with no breaks?
Well, then you hit exhaustion, the final stage. Your body's resources are depleted, and you start to see the negative effects of chronic stress. It's like the band has played their hearts out. They've done their encore, and now they're just completely drained.
That's a great analogy. But it makes me wonder, I've heard that a little bit of stress can actually be good for you. Is there any truth to that?
That's a great question, and it's a point many people misunderstand. The stress response in those initial stages, the alarm phase, is actually meant to be helpful. It's like your body's way of giving you a boost to deal with a challenge.
So that jolt of energy you get to finish a project or give a presentation, that's stress working in a positive way.
Exactly. It helps you focus, react quickly, and rise to the occasion. But the problem is that in our modern lives, we're often stuck in that resistance phase for far too long. And when that initial burst of energy doesn't get used, or the stressor just won't quit, that's when things go downhill.
It's like our bodies are primed for action, but then we just sit there and stew in our stress hormones. The source material actually mentions something called hypokinetic disease, where a lack of physical activity contributes to health problems.
That's a fascinating connection, and it perfectly illustrates the point that our bodies are designed to move when we're stressed. Think of it this way. In the past, that stress response was preparing you to either fight off danger or run away from it. You were literally using that energy to survive. But now, we're more likely to sit at a desk, stew in traffic, or scroll through social media when we're feeling stressed. We're not channeling that energy the way our bodies were designed to.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's not just about reducing stress. It's also about finding healthy ways to release that pent-up energy.
Exactly. And that brings us to another critical point. Stress isn't just about physical reactions. It has a powerful impact on our minds as well.
This brings us to another fascinating aspect of stress that I was reading about. The mind-body connection. I mean, we've all experienced how stress can make us feel mentally exhausted, but the source material went even deeper than that.
Absolutely. It's not just about feeling frazzled. We now know that stress affects virtually every cell in the body, including our immune systems. Think of it like this. Your brain and your immune system are constantly talking to each other. And when you're stressed, that conversation gets a little tense.
That explains why it seems like we always get sick at the worst possible times, like right before a big deadline. So my mental state is actually affecting my physical ability to fight off bugs.
Precisely. There's a whole field of study dedicated to this called psychoneuroimmunology. It's the science of how your thoughts and feelings can actually affect your immune cells. And there's some pretty compelling evidence to back this up. For example, studies have shown that simply anticipating a stressful event, like a big exam or a medical procedure, can weaken your immune response, even before the event actually happens.
That's incredible. So my mind is powerful enough to create a physical reaction in my body, even if the stressful event hasn't even occurred yet. It really highlights how interconnected our mental and physical well-being truly are.
It's a powerful reminder that we can't just compartmentalize our health. Our minds and bodies are constantly interacting, and stress plays a big role in that relationship.
This is already making me rethink how I view stress. So we know that stress can trigger these widespread physical and mental reactions. But are there certain parts of the body that are especially vulnerable to its effects?
You bet. While stress affects the entire body, some organs seem to be holding up little "we're weaker here" signs. And understanding these vulnerabilities can help us take better care of ourselves.
So where are these weaker here signs popping up in the body? What organs are most susceptible to stress?
Well, the cardiovascular system is definitely high on the list. Think about it. When you're stressed, your heart races, your blood pressure spikes. Over time, this constant state of alert can lead to problems like hypertension, migraine headaches, and even Raynaud's disease, which affects blood flow to your extremities.
So it's like stress is putting extra wear and tear on our entire circulatory system.
Exactly, and it all comes down to the overactivation of the sympathetic nervous system. That's your body's gas pedal, responsible for the fight-or-flight response. When you're stressed, your foot is basically stuck on that gas pedal, revving your engine even when there's nowhere to go.
That made a lot of sense. And what about our digestion? Does stress mess with our stomachs too?
Absolutely. The gastrointestinal system is a prime target for stress. Think about those butterflies you get in your stomach when you're nervous. That's your gut reacting to stress hormones. Chronic stress can disrupt the delicate balance of your digestive system, making you more susceptible to issues like peptic ulcers.
So those ulcers aren't just from spicy food, as the old wives' tale suggests. It's more about how our emotions are impacting our gut health.
Precisely. While diet can certainly play a role, stress can actually weaken the stomach's natural defenses, making it more vulnerable to those painful ulcers.
It's amazing how interconnected everything is. So heart, stomach, any other systems we should be paying attention to when it comes to stress?
Our respiratory system is another one that takes a hit from stress. You know how some people say their asthma flares up when they're anxious? Well, there's a scientific basis for that. Stress can trigger changes in breathing patterns and airway function, exacerbating conditions like asthma, and even causing hyperventilation.
It's like our lungs are mirroring the tension we feel in our minds.
That's a great way to put it. And of course, we can't forget about the immune system. We already touched upon how stress weakens our defenses, making us more prone to infections.
Right. But how exactly does that play out in terms of our overall health?
Well, besides making us more susceptible to those everyday bugs, stress can also increase the risk of developing autoimmune diseases. This is where your immune system essentially gets confused and starts attacking your own body. It's like friendly fire within your own immune system.
That sounds pretty serious.
It is. Autoimmune diseases are complex. But stress definitely seems to play a role in either triggering or worsening these conditions.
Wow. So stress affects our hearts, our stomachs, our lungs, our immune systems. It's starting to feel like a full body takeover. But amidst all these vulnerabilities, is there any good news? I mean, is there anything we can do about it?
There's actually a lot we can do, and a big part of it comes down to shifting our perspective. The source material highlighted this idea of cognitive appraisal, which is basically how we interpret events. It's not just the stressor itself that determines our response, but our thoughts and feelings about it. So it's not necessarily about what happens to us, but how we choose to view it.
It reminds me of that quote from the material, "Stressors, like beauty, lie in the eye of the beholder."
That's a great quote, and it illustrates how two people can experience the same stressful event, but their reactions can be totally different based on their perception of it.
This makes me think about personality types. I remember learning about type A personalities, those high-achieving, always-on-the-go individuals. Could their personality actually be a risk factor when it comes to stress?
There's definitely a correlation. Type A behavior, which is often characterized by impatience, time urgency, and even hostility, has been linked to a higher risk of heart disease.
So those go-getters might actually be putting their health at risk by constantly pushing themselves.
It's not a simple cause and effect situation, but it does highlight the role of personality in how we handle stress.
That makes sense. So it's not just about external events, but also about our internal wiring.
Exactly. Recognizing your own personality traits, especially those that might make you more vulnerable to stress, can be incredibly empowering. It allows you to make conscious choices to protect your well-being.
That's a really helpful perspective shift. But I have to ask, in practical terms, what can we actually do to manage our stress? What are some tangible steps we can take?
One of the most important things is to cultivate a sense of control, or what we call self-efficacy. When we believe we have some influence over events, we're much better equipped to handle stress.
I love that. It's like taking ownership of your experience rather than feeling like a helpless victim. But how do we actually build that sense of control, especially when things feel chaotic?
It often starts with small, deliberate actions. The source material actually mentioned a fascinating study where nursing home residents were given more choices and responsibilities in their daily lives. Even simple things like deciding what to eat or when to go to bed.
So it's about reclaiming those little pockets of autonomy wherever we can.
Precisely. And the results of the study were amazing. The residents who had more control over their environment showed significant improvements in their health and overall well-being, compared to those who didn't.
That's so empowering. Even small changes can make a difference. But what about more specific tools and techniques? What else can we add to our stress-busting arsenal?
Well, psychotherapy, especially cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT, is a powerful tool. It helps you identify and modify those negative thought patterns that fuel stress. It's like retraining your brain to react differently to those challenging situations.
So it's not about eliminating stress completely, but rather learning to manage it more effectively.
Exactly. It's about changing your relationship with stress. And then there's a whole world of relaxation techniques to explore. Things like meditation, neuromuscular relaxation, and controlled breathing are all about shifting your body into a state of physiological calm.
Those techniques seem to be gaining a lot of popularity these days.
And for good reason. They've been shown to have a wide range of benefits, from reducing anxiety and improving sleep quality, to boosting focus and creativity.
Okay, so we've got therapy, relaxation techniques. What else? There's so many options out there. It can be overwhelming to know where to start.
Another technique that might surprise people is biofeedback. It uses technology to give you real-time feedback on what's happening in your body, like your muscle tension, heart rate, even brain waves.
So it's like a window into your own internal world.
Precisely. And by becoming more aware of these subtle physiological changes, you can actually learn to control them. Biofeedback has been shown to be effective for managing a variety of conditions, from anxiety and migraines to chronic pain and high blood pressure.
That's incredible. It's like having a superpower to regulate your own internal systems.
And of course, we can't forget about the classic stress reliever, physical exercise.
Ah, yes, it's the good old endorphin rush. But is there more to it than just feeling good?
Definitely. Exercise is a natural way to vent that pent-up energy created by the stress response. It's like your body's way of finally getting to use that fight-or-flight energy for its intended purpose.
That's such a great visual. So instead of letting stress build up inside us, we can use movement to release it. And while we're on the topic of healthy habits, let's not forget about nutrition.
Absolutely. Supporting your body's ability to cope with stress through the balanced diet is crucial. Think of it as providing your body with the right fuel to navigate those stressful situations.
So it's really a holistic approach to stress management. Mind, body, and food.
Exactly. It's all interconnected.
It really highlights how we can't just treat stress as a mental issue or a physical issue. It's both, and it requires a multifaceted approach. I'm already starting to see stress in a whole new light after this conversation.
That's what these deep dives are all about, and there's always more to learn and explore. The field of stress research is constantly evolving.
So true. It makes me wonder, out of all the information we've covered, what stands out to me as the most crucial insight about stress?
What fascinates me most is how much control we actually have over our stress response. We're not just helpless victims of circumstance. We have the power to change our thoughts, our behaviors, even our environments to make ourselves more resilient to stress.
That's a really empowering message. It brings us back to that idea of self-efficacy, that belief in our own ability to navigate challenges.
Exactly, and it's a muscle we can build with practice. The more we engage in those small, intentional acts of self-care, the stronger our stress response system becomes.
So for our listeners who might be feeling a little overwhelmed by all this talk about stress, what's one concrete step they can take today to start feeling more in control?
I'd encourage them to try practicing one of the relaxation techniques we discussed earlier. Even just 5 minutes of focused breathing or a simple meditation can make a world of difference. Remember, it's not about achieving perfect Zen. It's about giving your nervous system a much-needed break.
That's great advice, and if they want to dive even deeper into this topic, we'll be sure to include links to some helpful resources in the show notes.
There's a wealth of information out there, from guided meditations and stress management programs to apps that can help you track your progress and stay motivated.
Well, listeners, that wraps up our deep dive into the fascinating and often misunderstood world of stress. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and practical tools to help you navigate the inevitable ups and downs of life. Remember, you're not alone in this, and you have the power to take control of your stress response. Until next time, happy diving!